Joel Sterling Brown is just a few miles away from me, I think in that direction, in Mukachevo, and he's actually hosting a lot of refugees, and he joins me now. Joel, it's great to have you with us. You got into the you didn't expect to be getting into the refugee housing business.
No, Mark, I did not. 3 weeks ago, I was a pastor of a church of 65, and now we host more than 500 people every night.
And have they come from all over Ukraine? I know you have ones from Kiev and Kharkiv, but they're from other parts of the country too.
Oh, they're from the entire country, and as you said, most of them are finding their way into Europe. Most people stay 1 day, 2 days, up to 3, but really 300 people we get new every single day, as there's just this turnover of people going to borders.
And where are most of them headed? Because this is slightly different from what we've seen in the last couple of years with the Syrian refugees in Germany and the Syrian refugees in Sweden. I don't get the sense from the people I've spoken to, even if they're going to Slovakia or Poland, they look on it as just a temporary stay until they can return and see if their apartment is still there.
Well, yeah, most of the people have a lot of faith in the Ukrainian army, and the phrase that you hear a lot is, "We'll be back when we win." And so most of them are just trying to find temporary shelter. Since Ukraine has had a lot of people that travel for work, a lot of times what happens is people come into our city to catch their breath before they move on, as they call relatives or people they know, to find where they can find a place to hole up until things change.
And are most of them in good spirits? I'm struck by the underneath the horror at what some of them have seen in the destruction of property, and some of them have seen deaths of young people and all the rest of it. But they seem driven by a very basic, unabashed love of country that you don't see in a lot of Western nations so much anymore.
Ukrainians are an amazing people, and a lot of that patriotism or that love of country comes after the Maidan revolution that happened several years ago, where Ukraine very quickly threw off a lot of that Soviet roots that it still held on, and in a lot of ways just embraced freedom. One of the mantras that people live by is that freedom is our religion. And so there are people that love their freedom and love life, which is one of the reasons why the invasion is so difficult, because you have a regime that is now closing in on its people and taking their freedom away, and you have people that are just enjoying and loving the country that has lifted their spirits in the last few years.
Yeah, no one wants to go back to being Kremlin slaves. Just tell us, you fell in love with a nice Ukrainian girl, and that's why you're here. But you also fell in love with Ukraine too.
16 years ago, I was given an opportunity to come to Kiev to work with a church there, and I ended up staying a lot longer than I expected. And I knew that I didn't want to leave. And then I met my wife. Both of my children were born here. And I've been here for 16 years. This is more home than anywhere else. And that's one of the reasons that we stay, is because where do we go and where is home? And if our city is a city of refuge, then we need to do what we can to help people. Because what can I say if I leave and then I come back later when it's safer? And if this is my home, then I stay here and I give that place of safety for others.
And I take it that when you talk about that, you have a U.S. passport and you could get your family out. you could be gone you could be gone and over the border in a couple of hours. But you feel that out of solidarity with the Ukrainian people, you have to stay.
Absolutely, out of solidarity with them, and I could leave, and I do have my passports, and my kids have their passports. But in truth, I don't know that it would. What message would it send? I'm a pastor of a church, and I talk about the love of God and the peace that He brings, and I talk about what that is for our life. And if I turn in fear, what does that do for my message? This is the moment where I think for a lot of people, the things that they preach are going to be shown in their actions.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, that this tests your commitment to your faith, because it's
Very much so.
Not just something you peddle in the pulpit every Sunday or whatever. It's something that you have to live even when the consequences become tougher. Well, I'm sure these refugees appreciate it. One of the things that's striking to me is the ease with which hospitality is offered and accepted here, and everyone seems to be, even though they miss their homes, they seem to be enjoying the people they're meeting along the way and the sense of solidarity that comes with it.
Yeah, I think that we're all working together, and I think one of the things that we really try to focus on is so many people want to talk about the tragedy of it and the horror of it. But honestly, what we try to do is we try to show hope. And I think that hope is infectious. And when they come to a place, when they can finally catch their breath and there's hope, that they receive that, and then they spread that hope along.
Well, that's a good note on which to end there, Joel. You're doing the Lord's work in difficult times, and I'm sure it's appreciated by this huge turnover of people, 300 people every day. Let's hope they'll be able to go back to their homes very soon. By the way, I should add that this is slightly different from, as I said, from the so-called millions of refugees that were taken in Germany and Sweden and other countries just 5 years ago, whatever it was. There may be another wave of those coming, because those refugees were prompted by the chaos and implosion that happened in the Middle East and North Africa following the Lehman Brothers global economy downturn, which actually just put up the price of bread. It was as basic as that. The price of bread rose in Egypt, and people couldn't afford it, and they got rid of Mubarak over that because they couldn't afford a crust of bread. And one of the consequences of Putin waging war in Ukraine